There is a specific, quiet sensation that almost every human being eventually encounters, a nostalgia for a home you cannot actually remember. It is a persistent sense that you have been dropped into a current, drifting away from an origin point that remains just out of reach. The Quran identifies a structural reason for this. In verse 36:3, it describes the human condition not as a blank slate, but as a deployment. You are a messenger carrying a pre-installed coordinate. The transition into the physical world involves a profound loss of resolution. As mapped out in verse 1923, the sheer complexity of biological existence and the sensory barrage of survival buried that original memory. The signal of your origin was submerged under the noise of reality. This creates a split in the architecture of your life. A single consciousness divides into two opposing vectors, the faint gravitational pull of its original alignment and the heavy, intoxicating pressure of the physical environment. Passivity at this junction allows the environment to win by default. Without an active grip on that original signal, the internal compass fails, and the mind is carried entirely by the external current. We can see the results of that failure here in the preserved remains of Pharaoh. This is a shell that remained intact. The skin, the bone structure, and the upward stare have survived for millennia. But while the physical matter was maintained, the spiritual orientation required to move against the current was lost. This suggests the true human condition is one of recovery. Life is the window of time you have to restore the original operating system before the river reaches its end. When viewed through this lens, the text functions as a map of consciousness. These lines of ancient manuscript represent the source code of the human experience. The names in the narrative act as variables for internal states. Ādam represents formed awareness. Iblīs is the pressure of refusal. Mūsā is the force of extraction. These are functions operating inside you right now. Once you are in the physical world, the system subjects you to a second phase, intense friction. This pressure is not random. It forces the consciousness to either crystallize its alignment or invert and collapse. Here is the geometry of alignment. Ayyūb maintains orientation despite immense downward pressure. Refusing to buckle, he forces a vector to pierce upward. But when the center yields, the coordinate system overturns. The planes snap into a closed loop, the inversion of Lut. Surviving the noise of this open system requires a specific kind of refuge, which the text identifies in verse 18:10 as the cave. The cave is a phase state. It functions like a topological Faraday cage, a conscious isolation that filters out the corrupting static of the world to preserve the internal signal. Within this structure, the trials of life function as a sorting process. When the friction of a misaligned world becomes constant, the system effectively pushes the consciousness toward the only space where that external field is neutralized, the protective vacuum of the cave. But isolation is a temporary state. You cannot remain in suspension indefinitely without triggering a total system failure. If you remain static while inside the cave, you trigger the condition described in verse 87:13. You enter a state of being neither living nor dying. You are trapped in a recursive Mobius loop, existing but never actually returning. Shifting the system back into motion requires an active command. Verse 19:12 provides the activation. Take the book with strength. This is an instruction to manually install structural integrity into your consciousness. It is a demand to grip the original blueprint so tightly that it becomes more real than the physical illusion. Consider the design of these interlocking rings in this suit of chainmail. Notice how each loop is linked to form a single, unified surface. This is the chainmail of Dawood. It represents a consciousness so thoroughly integrated with the book that the external world can no longer penetrate or hijack your identity. When you hold the book with this kind of strength, religion shifts from a set of cultural rules into a direct, covenantal law of physics. The circuit closes. The fragmented memory of your origin is restored, and the consciousness locks on to a direct return vector to its source. You are the reader. You are the boat in the current, and the coordinates for the return journey are in your hands. The universe is an operating system waiting for your manual override. When you activate the code, you do not just learn about your home,